Well, here we are today. You're in for a treat. I'm here in person. Yay! My very first in-person interview with Jessica Sly at her home in Spring Hill, Tennessee. And Jessica and I met in 2019 on the ACFW Scribes critique group and critiqued back and forth a little bit with each other. And we've connected a little bit. And I'm just excited to promote Jessica because she's going to be published this year. Yay! Her pre-orders are coming up in October, and the book's going to be out
December 15th.
December 15th. And what's the name of the book?
The name of the book is The Promise of Deception.
Okay, that sounds intriguing already, right? So I got a little ahead of myself there because I'm so excited. I finished reading her book last night. She was gracious enough to send me a head copy of even the final edit, and it's really good, even way better than when we were critiquing before, and it was awesome then. So anyway, so I'm going to let Jessica introduce herself, and you guys are just going to get to sit in on a conversation between friends and writing partners and hear about Jessica's writing life and about her book coming out. So welcome, Jessica.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right, so tell us about yourself.
Well, I grew up in Minnesota, born and bred all my life, and just moved to Tennessee like 2 years ago. I moved here for a job. I work as a copy editor for my day job. And so at night, then I come home and write. I went to school for writing and been writing all my life, basically.
Yeah, so you're a pro.
I hope so.
Yeah, so you're doing well.
Yeah.
Tell us about the genre that you write in.
Sure. I write in historical fiction, and this current book is set in early 1900s, so 1913 specifically, right before World War I, and it takes place in England. And there's a lot of murder and mischief and and hope and
yes.
Yeah.
And I found a strong spiritual thread in the book as well, but not overbearing when I say strong, but it's there. And if you are a believer in Christ, you can't miss the message, which I'm not going to say because I think it's fun as a reader to discover that, as you're going along.
Yeah, I feel like that's a springboard. Like as a Christian writer, that's just going to be a thread through all of my writing, whether it's prominent or not. And in this one, there are some more prominent threads that get pulled through it. And I hope that hope comes through in the end. There is a lot of darkness in the world, and so I try to portray that in a way that is real and that doesn't hold back from it, but then also have that hopeful thread. So at the end, the light wins. Right. Not to give away spoilers, but
well, it's Christian fiction, right? So Jesus always wins.
Yes, he does. He wins in the end. So
right. We have an extra interview. You probably can't see, but Jessica's cat's joining us down here. So if you hear noises, that's what it is.
That's what it is.
So tell us about your stories that I know you have a sequel you're working on. Are any of the things that you write based on personal experience or?
It's a very good question. I don't think I have like full stories that are based on like things in my life, but there are certain like maybe character quirks or maybe like a scene or like something that the character does. I know in some of like my characters' childhoods, just some memories that I have or I took from like that had happened to my parents in their past, and just little threads that I have of inspiration from my life, but not like a full story of something that happened.
Right. Now this book that's coming out, there's a lot of Irish characters. Tell us how that came about.
Yeah. So when I was in college, I went to Ireland for 10 days and kind of just fell in love with it. And for that class, when we went to Ireland, I had to do a short story for it. And so I had kind of already written that. But then as I was researching that time period, it kind of happened around the time when, the Irish were trying to fight for their independence from England. And so there was a lot of tension in that. And I just love the Irish language and the Irish accent and just everything about that. So I thought it would be really fun to have that incorporated in my story.
So I really love the setting with the theater and the magic.
Yes.
Like where did that come from, that idea to
Yeah.
incorporate that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there are a lot of movies that I grew up watching, like The Prestige or The Illusionist,
Mhm,
that kind of has that like Victorian, Edwardian feel, and it's just all very mysterious feeling. And I
mhm,
was always drawn to that type of story, with like the stage magic.
mhm,
I just think it's fascinating. So I was really inspired by that, and I thought it would be fun to have characters that are magicians too, because
mhm,
then you can kind of play around with like, oh, are they being truthful? Or are they like messing
mhm,
around with you? Or, you can
mhm.
kind of pull that through it too.
Yeah, that was really good, and I love how that played into the story, and even I could picture myself in the
Hmm.
theater
Hmm.
and being there at the show. And tell us a little bit about your characters.
Hmm.
Bays and
Yes.
Adeline are the
Yes.
two main characters.
Hmm.
So tell us a little bit about them and what was difficult about writing them, or what was
Sure.
easy to write about them.
Sure. So the main character is Adeline. She's a 20-year-old. She's kind of spunky.
Yeah, she is.
She she's part of the upper class in England,
Mhm,
so she's from a wealthy family. And so there's some tension in that, in where she has to uphold like what society wants of her, while also trying to follow what she wants for herself as well. And her personality is very different from mine. She's very outgoing, and there's a lot of situations where I would have just been like,
mhm,
nope, but she's like blazing ahead.
yeah.
So that was difficult, and that I had to pull myself out of the situation and be like, no, it's not what I would do, it's what she would do, and being true to her character. So there are some scenes I've had to rewrite and be like, I have to be more true to her in this moment. And then Bays Ford is a detective inspector. He's kind of the hero, to foil her a little bit, and not foil as in
Mhm.
sabotage,
Yeah.
be the foil for her. But and he has a personality more like mine. He's more of the soft-spoken type of person, which is interesting when put in his position as a detective.
Mhm,
And so there's kind of some interesting tension at play with that as well, in why he became a detective. And
mhm,
so writing his scenes were a little bit easier, because I could pull on like what more of an introverted type person would do, but then also more difficult in like how he would react in those situations, being forced to in that detective role. So there were pros and cons, and difficulties and easy things for both of them, I think. But I think
right.
Adeline was a little bit harder to write for me.
Yeah.
Um,
I
yeah.
enjoyed both of those characters. I liked her spunky attitude
Hmm.
and, jumping into things,
Hmm.
and sometimes uh, not the wisest decision to
Yes.
step into some of the situations
Yes.
that she got herself into. And
Yeah.
I loved, but I loved Bass too. I thought he was the perfect hero, and,
Hmm.
knowing a little bit about his childhood,
Hmm.
and what made him react and act
Yeah.
the way that he
Yeah.
was interesting to me too.
Hmm.
I really liked Bennett.
Yes, yes, Bennett. He's also a detective inspector, and he is kind of like the mentor character for Bays. He's a little bit older. He's been in it longer, and he's definitely the more upbeat, outgoing type person. So he's kind of the life of the party,
Mhm,
type character. And so he's just always cracking jokes or making fun of Bays. So
mhm,
he was really fun to write as well, because he could be the outgoing person that I am
mhm,
not. And then having those two play off of each other, whereas Bennett's kind of like the one who's always poking fun and is trying to make things lively, and Bays would rather just be like,
mhm.
let's just get to it.
Right. But he
Yeah.
was also a believer
Yes, he had a
when,
strong faith element in him, and Bays definitely starts out not that way, or is kind of struggling in his own walk. And so having that mentor in Bennett,
mhm,
was, I think, important to have, and have someone that has that strong character,
mhm,
strong faith.
right.
Um,
Yeah. And you mentioned there is murder and mayhem in your stories,
mhm,
but I loved like Bennett's prayer
yeah,
whenever they would come across a
yes,
corpse or something.
yes. I thought that was important, because it is dark and it's a terrible situation. And I thought, what would he do? He's got such a strong faith. What would he do in that situation? And he would pray over it. And,
Mhm,
you know, they don't know anything about the person that had just died. And so just
right.
blessing the situation before they try and bring justice to it.
Mhm. So your story is in the historical category, but I found it very suspenseful.
Yes.
And I had to go back and even look at your questionnaire that I sent you and
Yes.
said, okay, that's historical.
Yes.
But it comes across as like a mystery suspense
Yeah.
type story.
It's almost like a not hybrid, but and also when we were trying to figure out what to label it for like bookshelves and what booksellers would label it as, like it fits more in like with historical, but then also there's that very strong like suspenseful like detective police element too. And I think that just comes with like the inspiration that I had growing up and the shows I would watch, the books I would read. I was very into like the adventure filled stories. So even though it is a historical setting, like I had to put it in there.
Yeah, and I love that too, because suspense is one of my favorite genres as well. So what else do we need to know about this book and about the storyline? Anything you want to share with people who are watching that might say, well, should I pick that book up? Why would I pick that book up? But
yeah, that's a good question.
what's good for them? I mean,
it is.
If they like historical, they should read it. If they like suspense, they should read it.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, my end goal, is always to point people to Christ and to Jesus. And while that is a thread, I also love stories that are just fun and that you can get lost in and that you can just like pick up and like forget about everything else. And so I think that is a reason that people should pick it up, because I think
it's
they
entertaining.
can get lost in it. Yeah, it's entertaining. So while I do have the message too, ultimately I just want people to have fun and to have an escape.
Well, these days we need an escape, right?
Yes, for sure.
Get away from what's real sometimes and just enjoy a good story.
Yeah.
And it's definitely a good story. I enjoyed it very much.
Good. I'm glad.
So talk a little bit about what your life is like, your day as a writer. I know you have a job. You said you're a copy editor. So you do that all day and then you come home and write some more. So how much time do you spend on your novels?
That varies. Before this book was going to be published, it was a little more like hit or miss because I didn't have any like set deadlines that I was doing. So there I was just kind of writing whenever I felt like it. And now I have deadlines and I have to get things done. So now with my full-time job, I work during the day, 5 days a week. So I do that and then I come home and try to have like some relaxation time and then try to make some sort of habit of where like, I make myself a cup of hot chocolate and then go and sit down at my desk and try to write or try to do social media or something like that. It's not every day. I should try to get it to every day, but some days it's just a lot.
You need a break sometimes.
But when I do sit down to write, usually it's like 2 or 3 hours at a time and I just write straight through. I don't do short little bursts because I feel like once I get in the rhythm of it, I just have to keep going until my hand tires out, because I do write in a notebook.
Oh my
when
goodness,
I first started out.
Yes.
And so until my hand gets tired, I guess
that wouldn't take me long.
Yeah, so I can write in about 2 hours around 2,000 words in a notebook, which was shocked me when I realized that. So then I take my notebook and then I type it up onto the computer.
Now, do you wait to type it until you have all of it down, or do you type?
It depends.
In spurts.
If I wait too long, then it becomes more of a chore to put on the computer. So usually once I've finished writing, the next thing I do is transfer what I had just written to the computer, or I'll do it the next writing session. If I feel like procrastinating, then I'm like, I'll just type it up and then I don't have to write. So during the week, I do that, come home from work and then try to fit in some. And then Saturdays have actually become my main writing days. Like I'll wake up in the morning and then go straight to a coffee shop and stay there most of the day. It's like almost another work day. Like I'll bring my computer and set up shop and have everything. And so that's where I've been getting most of my work done, Saturdays.
So do you edit any at all as you go?
Nope.
So you just get the whole first draft out there
and it's terrible glory. Just because as an editor and as I find the editing process really fun, and so I'm tempted to go back and be like, oh, I know I wrote that really bad, I want to go edit it, but I'm like, no, you just have to get it on the page and then you can go at it.
See, I think that would be easier to do writing in a notebook, to not edit, because if you're on your keyboard, I know I'm like, oh, nope, I'm going to go back and fix that word. And oh, that's a better word. And
yeah, that's partially why I write in a notebook, is because you can only do so much to edit yourself in a note. I can cross something out and then write something, but you can't. So I'll leave notes in the margins to be like, oh, I have to add more description there, or I need to research this there. And so when I'm going back through it, I can make the notes and be like, oh, I have to do that once I get to the editing step.
Right. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
It sounds like you have it down and you know how to do it in a way that works for you. And that's what we all have to find, what works for us, because you've produced a great story. It's going to be very entertaining. I'm excited about your launch. Now people can pre-order this starting
October 15th, I believe.
Now, when this interview goes live, we're ahead of time here doing this. But by the time this interview posts, people will be able to go ahead and pre-order.
Yes, and you'll see the cover reveal come out.
Oh, when is that?
That will come out the same day as the pre-order. So once you see the cover, you'll be able to click and go order it right away.
I can't wait to see the cover.
It's pretty fun.
Have you seen it?
I have seen it. That was the fun part too, is I got to be involved a lot with the creation and like kind of give feedback on that. So I've got to see it from like start to finish, which has been really fun to see where we started to where it has ended up.
Which publishing house are you?
They're Mountain Brook Inc. and I'm with their imprint, which is Mountain Brook Fire, which is more of the speculative side of things.
So because your story kind of crosses over.
It definitely dabbles in the speculative. So, and I think that comes from like just my inspiration of growing up. I read a lot of fantasy and a lot of science fiction and all of that. So again, I had to sprinkle elements in there.
So you have different elements in there. So really her book is for anyone.
Yes.
Because there really are different elements of different genres that I found in there. Because I found like some of it, I'm like, well, it's kind of like a fantasy like storyline, but it's also historical and it's also suspenseful. So there's a lot in there. And I definitely encourage you to look for Jessica's book when it comes out. And you're going to be giving away a copy of the book. So one of you can win that book. You just comment on this interview and you might be the lucky winner of this book. So what else we got? A couple of minutes before we're going to wrap this up. Any last words that you want to share? How people, I'm going to share all your website link and your social media links. What's the best way for readers and fans to connect with you?
Yeah, for sure. I have a website, jessicasly.com. And so you can sign up for my newsletter. There I send out fun tidbits about the publishing process or the writing process or just things going on in my life. Or I am also on Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest. They're all at Jessica Sly Author. So that's where you can find me.
So stay connected, and she's working on book 2. And so read book 1 and then you'll be ready for book 2 and stay connected with Jessica. So this has been fun.
It's been a lot of fun.
I wish I could do this more often. Like all my other ones are on Zoom screen, you know, we're split in half, but we're actually here in person. And we're going to a conference, ACFW
tomorrow.
Online conference starts tomorrow. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, me too.
Well, thanks. And thanks for letting me in your home to do this interview.
Thanks for
coming.
Look
forward to your book.
It was a lot of fun. And thanks, guys.
All right. Bye, everybody. See you next time.